Well, you may recognize this gentleman, Darin Myers, who has done podcasts before with us. And Darin also writes a weekly column that appears in Augusta Business Daily. Speaking of which, you can catch it every Thursday. And for the entire month of September, how about this? Who said there was no free lunch? Free access. We're opening up our website. We're very excited to share business leaders' information and all the stories going on.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for people to learn things about the CSRA.
Yeah.
I get a lot of value out of reading it every day.
Well, and I get a lot of value throughout the month, every month from Darin Myers. I'm a member of his tab board. It's called the Alternative Board. Now, how long ago did you start the board, and what led you into becoming, I guess, a franchisee of tab?
Yeah, I started the board 15 months ago. Prior to that, I had not heard of tab. Or the alternative board. But what appealed to me, Neil, was as the coming from corporate America, I really had the opportunity to have a lot of input from differing people. And it was very comforting to know that you had other people that could give you advice, and sometimes maybe not always comforting, but at the end of the day, it was something that corporate America is about. And I don't necessarily think small or medium-sized business owners have that luxury of having advice. And so when I sat down and thought about it, I thought it could be really something that I could take what I'd learned from corporate America and give that kind of same assistance to the small and medium-sized business owner.
Absolutely. And for those watching here that are involved as business owners or executives that have the ear of the ownership, what are the type companies that might benefit from joining a board?
Right. Well, it's very diverse, and there's not any given board. So I have more than one board, by the way. I have several. But at the end of the day, they come from all industries. So I try to draw from non-competing sectors. So on any given board, you're only going to have one car dealer, one insurance agent, so on and so forth. So that's important. They're very confidential kind of situations. But at the end of the day, everybody comes to the board with a little bit different background. And, it could be a startup business that just needs a little bit of mentorship. It could be a business that's in a rut, that's had some success, but has found themselves in a little bit of a problem. We know we're in a changing business environment, especially post-pandemic. People that are going through a transition, considering maybe transitioning power to a family member or somebody else. Somebody that's considering selling a business and really wanting to get their business, not just about them, but really get their entire culture, the process, and team up to where it needs to be, which would really add the premium of their selling price of their business. So it's all different shapes and sizes. It's not particularly one industry. It's not a particular person. It's frankly a lot of different people.
Well, we're continuing to speak with Darin Myers, and Darin runs Tab CSRA, and it's tabcsra.com. And, you mentioned the time we live in, supply chain issues, employment. How often do these issues come up in the context of a monthly meeting?
Well, I think even though you're coming from diverse, as we've mentioned, diverse industries, I would say 70 to 75% of our issues that we hear in our boards are somewhat common. We share the same issues. As of late, certainly the labor, the great resignation, the post-pandemic issues, and I've even heard a term recently called quietly quitting. But at the end of the day, we have a lot of similar issues like labor, like recruiting, like dealing with conflict avoidance in the workplace. So there's a lot of commonality, but certainly there's some things that are unique that each individual brings to the table. And I think that's what the board gives is that outsider's perspective. A lot of times I ask people that before they join the boards, who's your advisory board, or who is the people that you rely on? And formally, it may be a CPA,
spouse, right?
But spouse, golf partner, or drinking buddy.
Yeah.
and that may be fine, but as people grow their business, I think that frankly becomes fairly thin, and just getting an outsider perspective, I think, is very important. One of the things we try to advertise in our boards is, hey, we're paying each other to really hear what we think, not what we think you want to hear. So that spouse, that golf partner, heck, maybe even the CPA may not be in a position or feel comfortable enough to tell the business owner what they really need to hear.
They're getting a check.
There's a little bit of conflict, maybe. And so the point is I like to always start the boards with, hey, we're here to tell each other if our baby's ugly, let's tell them.
Yeah, that makes good sense. What would you say is the number one benefit somebody would get out of joining the advisory board?
That's a difficult question, because I think each and every board you get something different, and each person gets something different. But I would put it in certainly 3 different categories real quickly. One, the diverse experience, that you're not drawing from the same group of people, a little bit of a group think mentality. So you're getting a lot of diverse thought and experience. One of the boards that you're on has about 180 years of local business experience. Number 2, there's an accountability theme, and we'll cover the agenda here, I'm assuming, in a moment. But one of the things we try to do is hold each other accountable to the commitments or actions that we said we were going to go do. I think often some business owners just need a little prod in the back. They don't necessarily have to work for anybody other than themselves. Maybe that's why they went into business to begin with. But at the end of the day, having a little bit of accountability to someone to take on an issue that you'd rather avoid, but have that confidence that your peer team is giving you good advice and then holding you accountable to execute whatever you've committed to, I think is extremely powerful for a lot of people. And then thirdly, I just think people get a lot of comfort, that we deal some of these same common issues. There's a little psychological edge when you go and you hear people dealing with similar issues. It may not necessarily solve the issue, but there's a little bit of comfort and reinforcement in your own confidence
I'm
not alone.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And I think that's very, very powerful. That early on I didn't recognize, but over the last 15 months of doing these boards, I think that's extremely important as well.
I couldn't agree with you more. Well, Darin Myers, again, is the facilitator for the local TAB board, and the website is tabcsra.com. And Darin is, as he mentioned, is expanding and adding more boards in the community. And it's been a great experience. I would recommend that you get in touch and maybe have coffee and just talk and see if it's the right fit. Is that a good way to start?
I would love that. And the one thing I also love about the TAB board is it's not contractual. In other words, it is a month-to-month. And I can say this should add value, and I think it says something, is after 15 months of having many, many members, I've yet to have somebody take themselves off the board.
Right.
Even though they have the ability to do that on a monthly basis.
Yeah. We look forward to it. You become friends, which is important.
And that does build trust over time. As you know about the agenda, for the audience real quickly, we ask each one of us to come and bring an issue or an opportunity where you're put in the batter's box for 15 to 30 minutes, depending upon the issue that you have or opportunity. Through that exercise, we get to hear the issue, pinpoint some questions to the owner, and then ultimately give the advice or suggestion. The owner then takes something from that and makes a commitment to the board of, here's what I'm going to do over the next 30 days. Not that we're necessarily expecting you to solve world hunger on the more complex issues in 30 days, but there's things that you take one step at a time. And so, as you know, when we come back the next month, what's the first agenda item we talk about?
What did you do with how have you been held accountable, and what'd
you do with your commitment?
Yeah,
right.
What'd you do?
And so it really helps folks that maybe procrastinate or want to avoid continue to kick things down the road.
All right. And
And the other thing I really think is very important is the last agenda item that we have on our board is what's your biggest takeaway for the day. And I find it somewhat fascinating that often, I would say it's at least 70% of the time, it's what somebody else around the table, what they were told about their particular problem was their biggest takeaway. In other words, you're getting to learn from other people's experiences, even though it may not apply to your circumstances today.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting that wisdom and experience through 7 other peers in some of the issues. And as you know, often the biggest takeaway is not what you were necessarily told about your issue, but what somebody else got told about their issue.
Yeah, you learn through it.
You learn from each other.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Darin. And we're going to dive deeper over the course of the next several weeks into TAB CSRA. And hopefully you'll get set up and learn a bit about how this advisory board can be of help to your business. Thanks again, Darin.
No, I appreciate your having me.
Sure.